Okay, so the last presentation will be given by Hélène Chiapello, working at INRAE on the topic of training. So, okay, perfect.
Thank you, Alban. Hi, everyone. So I will conclude this session with a very quick talk on 2 EFB training action we designed during the last 2 years and that are related to FAIR principles. So in fact, we designed 2 actions. The first one, which is related to FAIR principle applied to a typical bioinformatics analysis. And we name it as a shortcut, the FAIR Bioinfo training. And the second one is related to data management along a project, and we name it FAIR Data. So our aim with these 2 training is to induce rapid changes in our bioinformatics community. And for this, we decided to train in priority future trainers, bioinformaticians, but all the community interested in this new practice. And for the course design, we gather a group of 6 to 8 trainers plus helpers that are either from EFB, NNCR Task Force, EFB working groups, and regional platforms, but also from other bioinformatics research team. And as much as possible, we try to apply these FAIR principles also to training material that are made available for all the community and trainees and helpers to be able to disseminate. So the first training is a FAIR Bioinfo training that was set up in 2020 together with, in partnership with the I2BC Institute at Université de Paris-Saclay, especially Claire Tofano-Nioche, Céline Hernandez, and also Thomas Donecker that who now join the EFB. And the objective of this training is to learn how to make a data analysis reproducible, and also to apply FAIR principles through hands-on training and such as the practical session on using many standard tools, for example, GitHub, GitLab, Docker, SnakeMake, Jupyter notebooks, and so on. So the target audience of this training is bioinformaticians, software developer, and computational scientists. It is a face-to-face training that lasts 2 days plus 1 optional day that are dedicated to future trainers, and we work on training material to add a new new interesting feature. And the first edition of this training took place in Paris 1 year ago. In fact, we were very lucky because it was between the first and the second confinement, and all people were very happy to meet. And the second edition took place a few days ago, also in Paris. At this time, we are planning 1 edition a year for the next year. So the second training I want to focus on is the FAIR data training. And here the objectives are to learn fundamentals of open data, including legal aspect, because there is a strong demand on this aspect also. And we also include practice session for practicing the data management plans in a bioinformatics context. And we also add a special module on metadata in the context of omics data, because it's a key point to help the community to adopt good practice. So as we work during 1 day on this new training, and it was 2020 years, So we decided to organize it at a synchronous video mode training. It lasts 5 half days over 2 weeks, and as it was a very new training, we decided to have a crash test with EFB members, and it was very useful because we have had very interesting feedback from our colleagues. And after that, we have a second edition last March with bioinformaticians, data brokers, and future trainers, and we are planning a third edition for next November. So just to conclude, we have for these two new trainings very good feedback from trainees, and I think we meet a need of the community, the bioinformatics community. Interestingly, the training session exposed gaps that are currently being addressed in the EFB roadmap, and especially in the EFB Moody's for LS project. Such gaps are, for instance, metadata management along a project for which we have not yet a dedicated tool, or data brokering activities. And finally, we are very happy because two-thirds of the trainees are or intend to become future trainers. So, and all of course are open science ambassador. So training is the key. I already said by Sarah, I guess. Thank you very much, and I'm ready for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Hélène. So this closes this very flash session on demos and short talks. So we can allocate before the roundtable, or as part of the roundtable, some questions on the demos. So we have one question for Pierre from Valentin Lou. So great talk, Pierre, thank you. So the question is, who is funding software heritage, and who will ensure that it will be sustainable, not as for the Google Code initiative?
Okay, this is a very interesting question. Thank you for this, because always following the money. So basically, Software Heritage is a non-profit organization, and it is owned by people from INRIA, basically. And it is supported by also non-profit organizations that, such as the UNESCO, and from governmental research agencies such as CNRS and INRIA. And of course, the private companies can bring money to this project, but definitely it is owned by the public sector. So this is something very important. And another element of answer is you can, if you want, have a mirror of software heritage. If you want, you need a big cluster, but it's absolutely doable. And for instance, there is already a mirror in Italy and already a mirror in Sweden. So basically, nobody really owns the data.
Thank you, Pierre. It's very clear. Marie-Dominique?
Yes. Also concerning software heritage, I wonder what query capacities you have, functionalities, because it's okay if you have your own Swift, or I don't know, the ID to go back to your code, but what if you want to know if there exists another code that does the same thing, because you are then confronted with these problems for registries that should annotate what the code is doing, etc. So what are the query capacities?
Okay, so basically it's up to the user to bring metadata, as I said previously, and there is an API you can query to dig into software heritage, but you cannot maybe send 1,000 queries per minute into this API because it has limited capacity. But this is the idea. Basically, it's also to bring to researchers, to computer science. It's this big database to dig into.
Thank you.
For example, the README can be analyzed by the query engine?
Not yet, because there's no standard. At some point, the only one who may be analyzed is the code meta.json that is machine readable.
Okay, thank you.
So on the size of the data sets, so we have a question: which kind of machine do you need to run?
The first one is storage. So far it's 700 terabytes uncompressed. So you need a big hard drive, and to run all those queries, you also need a different system. I don't have it in mind, but I can send you the specificities. But it's quite big.
Okay, maybe one question from my side. So you have been comparing on the identifiers DOI, and you are proposing another kind of identifier. So what is missing to DOIs, and what are you proposing?
Basically, the issue, DOI are great, of course, but the issue with DOI is extrinsic identifier. It means that if you give me a DOI, I have no idea when I could get your data from, or maybe to which paper it corresponds, or maybe to which data set in Zenodo it corresponds. Whereas with Swedi, the idea is actually the cryptographic hash to the project. So it's very easy to check, for instance, and you don't need a third party that will tell you, okay, so you have this read, so the data is here. So as the user himself or herself can directly check the validity of the SWID. And the other thing is also with the SWID, you can very easily dig inside the code and specify a given version, a given file, or a given some lines inside the file.
Thank you. Dominique?
Yes, if I can, I have another question for Julien and Laurent about OpenLink, because I found it very impressive to be able to submit to Zenodo in one click. But of course, I noticed that the condition is that the files in the lab are very well organized because you have zip file, Homero, etc. So how extensible can be with any type maybe of file management, or is it very conditioned by these types of organization intrinsic to the lab?
Hello. Actually, currently, OpenLink is already compatible with a C file or Homero, but we are planning to develop more extension to be able to communicate with other data management tools. So your data have not to be organized. The idea is to help you organize your data with the help of OpenLink, and to be able to identify for each part of your project where your data are located. So yes, currently we are still in sort of a proof of concept. So we are working with tools that are available in our lab, but there is an open architecture that will let us develop more extension and to be able to connect to other data management tools.
Okay, and in particular to this MRDMP?
So the DMP is not a data management tool. It's not storing any data for us. It's a way to explain how you are going to handle your data, on how you are going to store them, onto what will be the life cycle of your data. So we don't really know now what kind of important information we could get from the DMP and import into OpenLink. But this is still something that we are looking for, and we are working with Olivier to make sure that if there is an opportunity to get kind of information from a DMP, we make sure to do it.
Oh yes, yes, I think definitely at the metadata level, so that the user is not obliged to enter everything again if he has entered it in the DMP, but there should be some harmonization.
That's the point. That's the point.
Yeah.
Of course, if there is already a full description of a project in the DMP, it could be great to be able to get it from OpenLink and to inject it into Labo or somewhere else, of course.
Great, great.
Do we have any other question from all the participants? We have still 66 participants and we are a bit late, but maybe you can take a few more questions. I would have one question for Philippe Rocasera, but I'm not sure if he's still online. No.
He's not among the panelists anymore.
Okay. How do we proceed?
So maybe my proposition was to ask each of the speakers if they want to give a kind of concluding word.
Philippe is here.
Oh, great.
Okay. So my question was, so there are several communities that are facing verification of their resources. So I went through the RDM kit and there was some very interesting community-driven sections. So how do you plan to help specific communities and how do you plan to route them through recipes for their use case? So I'm thinking in a health community, for instance, managing sensitive health data, for instance. But
yes, that's a very good question. Thank you, Alban, for that. So there are two aspects. The first one is we tag each recipe with a number of flags or keywords. So that's just to allow the search engine built on top of the book itself to be able to hit. That's low key. We need to do a better job in a way to provide targeted content. So in a way, this is why I had to leave actually. So briefly, I was having a talk with Malvika Sharan from the Alan Turing Institute, who's in charge of organizing the other book of data science, for instance, and they are also very interested in providing community-oriented content. So we will be discussing the best ways. The other question answer that I can give you is that Fushi, Xu, and Eva Martinez-Pico have been working on a component, a module to allow searching the recipes with a different tool, but exploiting the information, the metadata about the recipes. So that would be, again, one way to use the tags to guide people. But what we also want to do is to provide, context-specific recipes. And so at the moment, we are also limited by the scope of IMI FAIR Plus, which is, we have to use either clinical data or observational data or fundamental. But we also have on our agenda to open up. And I mentioned during my presentation, we would like to have MyAPI, for instance, or give examples outside the health data, just to open up. So that would be this. And also the core, like if you have a data type that you're interested in and for which you have a verification recipe or a process that you have in place, just get in touch with us. Or even if you host that information on your GitHub repo, if you follow a pattern that we can recognize, then we could possibly fetch it as well. So that's I think, I hope, there was another thing I wanted to mention. in terms of yes, regarding the guidance and especially the how to encode when you have to deal with sensitive data. So we have a working group, a couple of people very deep into discussing these aspects on how to navigate the access requests. But of course, we have to be aware of the passport specification for GA4GH, which gives also one aspect. So there are many moving parts that we probably need to cobble together and provide more content. So again, if there are people interested in that topic, I guess Hélène was the name, I think just before was presenting that aspect. So I think that would be also really neat to have the French insight. Because for instance, we've been the ethics part of the book is covered by Anne Cambon-Thompson and Alejandro Delfin from University Paul Sabatier in Toulouse, and this is really a nice contribution to the book, and this is the kind of aspect we'd like to see as well, not just the technical nitty-gritty details.
Thank you very much for all these answers. Do we have more questions? So maybe I don't know. So it's already 10 to 6. So I don't know, Marie-Dominique, do you want to ask or to discuss one or two more points, or shall we close the session?
Maybe I can share, where is it? The last slide. How can I view it? I don't know. Full screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. It's not completely on full screen, but it's okay.
Oh, okay. What is essential for open science and bioinformatics? What is urgent after all what we have listened? So these are just items, and just to let you think about it, and ideally to propose your ideas. So essential are machine actionable DMPs essential standards. We heard about MyAPI, interoperable resources such as CSGNet, which are very great potential, use case, software components, plugins, and what is urgent. I mean, what for example, the IFB should focus on. So training, it's already one of our main activities for that. Tools for verification, like the fair checker, is marking up web pages urgent, and tools for that should be proposed. Training, of course, in metadata management. Of course, these lists are to be continued. And maybe this slide could be the support for a concluding remark from our panelists, if they agree to. So I don't know who wants to say a word about that, to kind of concluding remark from our speakers. You are welcome to take the floor.
Well, if nobody jumps in, maybe I can try to answer and to initiate things. First, I'd like to thank you for the organization. They were really interesting talks. Regarding the question you're raising on this slide, the urgent things or the essential things is definitely training, and training not only for computer scientists, but also for researchers. It is something that is being done. It is rather central in a lot of activities, so I'm not too worried about that, but I just would like to stress how important it is. And although I've get a feeling that standard for communities, well, I'm in a good position to say how important it is. But at least for what I'm working with, even if there are always room for improvement, we've got rather reliable tools. What we need now is to use all of those tools and standards at bigger scales. So probably use cases, but more than use cases, it's demonstration cases. It's not what we could do is, okay, we've got this series of great data set. We have brought them together and we have done those kind of things with it. And as some of the speakers said, I don't remember who, sorry, it's important to demonstrate the benefit for this. Yes, showcase.
Thank you, Cyril. Does someone else want to make a concluding remark?
Maybe I'll jump in here to follow on Cyril's intervention. I think, as pointed out for instance, in both the presentation by Sarah and the content of the book, for instance, the aspect of reusability is one that is difficult to gauge. And that touches again on the how do we demonstrate the value of spending time doing FAIR if we are not able to connect data sets in meaningful ways. And at the moment, as everybody starts verifying data, and there is such a sea of standards and options available, we might run into the problem of having a lot of FAIR data that is somehow hard to connect without a lot of mapping still. So these are the aspects of convergence that we'd be interested to discuss. For instance, the Go FAIR initiative as a matrix to look at this. And more recently, I can share an experience as well that we had here in Oxford. It was organized by the collections, museums, and it was a very interesting experience because we started with the data from the Arboretum near Oxford, and then we started interrogating various databases to see what we could fetch, and also improve the data that was served by the Arboretum sensors, for instance, and try to make those data fair from the onset. And it has raised so many interesting questions, and also as Cyril pointed out, there are already many tools that exist. So how can we mobilize this? For instance, AgroILD that was presented during the Elixir All-Hands meeting as well is a resource available. How can we make the most of these endpoints that already exist in meta-analysis, for instance, or making new connections? That would be a really nice challenge to have. Maybe during and I think there is already a session on this during the next biohackathon anyway. So all interesting challenges to discuss.
Thank you very much. So, someone else? If not, I think that the time has gone and everybody has.
We have Sarah.
Sarah.
No, it was just to help. I mean, we are all tired, but we would love to continue talking together, right?
Yes, in fact, we cannot finish.
Let's say that if I have, I mean, my feeling is that really compared to 20 years ago, we have much more hope. First, because we are still there on the same kind of topic, and it's still very fruitful. So this makes sense that we should continue working on that, and that it's real topics. What I can see is that if we want to succeed, we have to learn how to make noise. When we see a project like Software Heritage, or a lot of project of Carol, or even of a lot of other PI that we have heard, they had to be everywhere. They had to claim and state and say again and again and again that they were needs and that they were offering even a partial solution, but still an element of solution. And I would say that probably it's the part where we haven't been good at, and we should learn how to make much more noises on what we are doing collectively. So to me, that's the first, let's say, learning thing that I that I have in mind. And the second one is definitely training. At the University of Paris Sud, which was the previous name of Paris-Saclay, we had this crazy idea 20 years ago to have the very first master in bioinformatics. Believe me, a lot of people were telling that we were crazy. Come on, it's not a science in itself. How come you are applying science and think that this applying science will be a science in itself? Today, it's not a question. We have plenty of masters of bioinformatics. We know specific problems that are not database problems, that are not biological problems, that are bioinformatics problems. So if we believe on it, if we take risk, then it may work. So thank you very much for this day. That was great. I'm so sad that I cannot hug you and take a drink without alcohol with you. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, and thank all speakers. If anybody wants to take a final word, so okay. But I think
maybe just simply to thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm really impressed by how active the French community is, and I agree with Sarah. Seeing more of this is just brilliant. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Philippe. We are very blessed, and it was great to have you. So we also thank everybody. And say goodbye, and see you tomorrow for the following of JOBIM. It's not finished. and also hope that this topic, open science and interoperability, will give other opportunities to meet and discuss and make noise and keep hope. So bye-bye.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Merci à tous. Je peux fermer la salle, hein?
Oui, merci pour les heures sup, désolé.